Steve, what I find interesting is that we didn't really give a hoot about what was going on in Italy, at least as far as market pricing was concerned, until last week, basically. We haven't worried about populist governments around Europe, I think, really since the election cycle ended last year. Is it time to start worrying about that again?
I think it is. I mean, I think we need to sort of cast our mind back to actually what happened in March at the election, and that is, in fact, this was a complete rejection of the status quo. This was a rejection of establishment parties. Yes, indeed, there were different variants. There was, as I said, a kind of Nigel Farage variant, and there was a Jeremy Corbyn version. But they were very, very different parties to what had been there before. And the governing party, the Party of the Socialists, had its worst performance since the war, down at 20%. Now, let's try and think through, why did this happen? Why did the Italian electorate so comprehensively reject the status quo? Was it because growth had stalled? Was it because employment was suddenly a problem? No, not at all. In fact, if anything, there'd been a bit of a turnaround. Some people were talking about Italy as the sort of next Spain or Ireland as a real recovery play. I think what's going on here is that it's actually moral hazard that's crept into the minds of the electorate. This is the unfortunate product of QE. The assumption that when the president of the ECB says, I'll do whatever it takes, it means that you can just send the bill to Frankfurt. And therefore, the kind of concept that you should be worried about or fearful of the bond market, the uncosted programs, which effectively the putative government was a totally uncosted program, that they were going to cut taxes, they would increase welfare, that somehow or another somebody else would pay for it. This is what the electorate, I'm afraid, are believing in.
Do you not think that this has in some way been caused by immigration? Because all these populist problems have come ever since the refugee sort of flood across Europe.
Yeah, I accept. I mean, that's a very incendiary extra problem. And some people, some political parties, certainly the League, are, very, very exercised about that. And there are other political parties in Europe, in Hungary and Poland, that also have latched onto that fear. But I think this is much more an issue about moral hazard. Previously, people would have thought, hang on a minute here, yes, of course I want to have lower taxes and more welfare, more spending on the NHS, more this, more that, the other. So it's not just an Italian concept, but somehow or another, the belief now in many electorates around the world is that, well, we can actually have a free lunch here, that the Fed will sort it out, the ECB will sort it out, the Bank of England. Jeremy Corbyn talks about the people's QE, whatever that means. And this is a very dangerous phenomenon, and I don't think it's over yet. I think the people actually have to see a product of their own folly. Now, what will that folly be? Will that folly be a real renaissance in inflation? Will it be stagflation? Probably yes. And that's what I'm afraid is coming.